how can this theory actually be implemented within an organization? How can it contribute and complement what is already there with courses, with training programs? Where should L&D leaders start when thinking about creating a social learning strategy, or how to integrate social learning into their existing learning and development strategy? Again, Roy, I'll let you take this one off first.
Sure. So it should be part of any learning and development strategy at its base. And on top of that, every learning and development strategy should evolve, but really be foundational around this concept of creating a culture of learning within the organization. When you develop and start to create that culture, that learning is important, that it could be self-directed, you want to grow, you go out, you seek the learning opportunities yourself. And then because you're creating this culture, you share that information, you can put it into LMS, you can put it onto Confluence. It should just kind of be ingrained, expanding the scope of your current strategy to involve social learning. And in reality, when you think about it, it also helps to alleviate a lot of the lift off of learning and development, creating the products or the training that you're pushing out to the org. By integrating this social learning concept, you can then start to focus on priority training. So a great thing that we did at Komodo, we took the concept of social learning and kind of expanded it as much as we possibly could, whether it was utilizing our internal LMS, which we call Edison, the forums there, but also allowing people to create their own courses directly within our LMS. Again, capturing that institutional knowledge within the organization, giving people the ownership over sharing their level of knowledge, and ultimately alleviating a tremendous lift off of learning development, which then allowed us to prioritize higher level training initiatives rather than kind of focusing on lower hanging fruit.
Quick follow-up question to that is, in this idea of kind of like learner-driven or demand-driven learning, where the employee actually seeks out their own learning opportunities, could you shed a little bit more on how that actually changes the roles and responsibilities of an L&D team and an L&D practitioner, for example?
Yeah. So it really works if the organization has built that foundational culture that learning is important. And then what happens is people start to seek their own growth opportunities. They're kind of given keys themselves. So traditionally, learning development, people partners, we'll just call it the greater people team, creates these kind of very linear career paths. You're here, you want to get here. These are the things you kind of have to do. It's very prescriptive. But if we flip that, take into concept this social learning, let people be self-directed, well, now they're kind of moving the needle themselves. They're identifying their own skills gaps. They're seeking out training that is relevant to them and the role that they do, rather than depending on their manager or their manager's manager or their manager's manager's manager to say, these are the skills that are needed in this role, when they just might not know. And it's an important data point for us to collect as well. So when we look at our learning management system, we can see how many people self-enroll in training, whether it's in e-learning, whether it's going to a conference or reading a book or whatever it is. And we evaluate that. And our goal is to move that needle the most. The more engagement we get, so the more self-enrollment we get, the better we see our culture of learning getting, and thus kind of this whole social learning concept kind of explode, because it's now the organization that's training and teaching each other, rather than it being just very prescriptive from learning and development and compliance.
Nathan, any thoughts to add before asking any other follow-up questions on that one?
Yeah, I think for me, the key thing here, to continue with my prior point, is to assess the current state of how much of your employees' learning is happening independently versus socially. Are you in the kind of culture where people are encouraged to watch courses in an LMS by themselves, or read documentation by themselves, or take an online course in the evenings? Or is your company in the kind of culture that has a lot of live interaction, one-on-ones, group sessions, workshop opportunities for people to exchange knowledge? Do you have Slack channels that are focused on exchanging ideas? Do you have town halls where people can ask questions? Do employees create content for others to consume or not? Like, is someone creating a podcast internally? And so to me, a lot of the times with learning and development, the first thing that you do is you get an LMS and you load courses in there, and then you kind of encourage people to take them, which I consider independent learning. And a lot of the tools out there today are geared towards independent learning. So don't be surprised if the answer is, once you do that assessment, you are too skewed towards independent learning. It's traditionally been harder to do the social learning type interactions because they require workshops or live events or somebody to organize it. And so make that assessment first. Probably later on in the webinar, I'll talk about different kinds of social learning formats that you can use. But I think if that's the case, then you've skewed a little bit more towards independent learning than social learning, and maybe you want to have more of a mix. That'd be where I would start.